J.R.R. Tolkien once wrote something fascinating back in a 1958 letter. He said, "I am in fact a hobbit in all but size." Now, that wasn't just, a charming little comment from the creator of Middle-earth. It feels more like a real window into his soul. So today, we're doing a deep dive into how Tolkien's own life experiences, things like loss, exile, this deep, deep yearning for home, how they didn't just inspire Middle-earth, but actually really shaped it. By the end of this, you'll see his early life isn't just some background detail. No, it's the very ground his best-loved stories grew out of.
Yeah, absolutely. And our mission today, for you listening, is to explore just how his orphanhood, this feeling of always being displaced, how that fueled his, well, literary obsession, really, with home, loss, and belonging. We're drawing on it quite a bit here. His biography, those incredibly revealing letters of J.R.R. Tolkien, and of course, looking closely at the texts themselves. The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, even the Silmarillion.
Okay, so let's trace this back, right back to the start. Tolkien's childhood. It was really marked by some major losses, and from such a young age, he was born in South Africa, 1892, but the first big upheaval came very quickly.
It did. In 1896, Tolkien Ronald, as he was called then, was only 4. His father, Arthur, died suddenly of rheumatic fever. So his mother, Mabel, she moved him and his brother back to England, near Birmingham. But you have to understand, this wasn't really a happy homecoming for them. It was more like seeking refuge. And this event, it established this permanent sense of absence, his first real experience of being displaced.
And the losses just kept coming, tragically. Only 8 years after that, in 1904, Tolkien's now 12 years old, and he faces another huge blow. His mother, Mabel, dies. Diabetes.
Yeah, and the context around Mabel's death is, well, it's really important. She'd converted to Catholicism back in 1900, and this decision basically alienated her from her family, her Protestant family, leaving the Tolkiens quite isolated. Before she died, she put her sons in the care of Father Francis Xavier Morgan. Tolkien himself wrote about her suffering later. In letter 267, he said, she died alone, robbed of everything, because she had chosen to do her duty to God and to bring up her children as Catholics. So this loss, it cemented this lifelong, deep devotion to his Catholic faith. And you really see these themes, maternal love, sacrifice, popping up again and again. Think of Galadriel, Elbereth, Luthien in his Legendarium.
Wow. So these early losses, losing both parents so young, they weren't just personal tragedies then. They were, like you said, the emotional soil for Middle-earth.
Absolutely, the soil. It's foundational. And you see it manifest so clearly. Think about the Shire. The Shire is, well, it's everything Tolkien's own childhood wasn't, right? It's stable, it's safe, deeply rooted. You picture those warm kitchens, the garden paths. He actually described it himself in letter 213 as an idealized amalgam of rural England that I loved, especially as it was before the war. So the Shire is way more than just nostalgia. It's a kind of mythic home, the unfallen garden of innocence almost.
Yeah.
Frodo and Sam's journey doesn't just start there physically, it starts there emotionally. The threat to the Shire becomes the threat to everything Tolkien himself longed for: stability, peace, memory.
Yeah, I can picture it. Bag End, Bilbo's place, that round green door, the pantry full of food. It really does feel like a shrine to comfort, doesn't it? And it makes sense then why The Lord of the Rings doesn't just end when the ring is destroyed. That whole return to the Shire, the scouring of the Shire chapter, it feels essential. It's like only by fixing home, by restoring that space, can the story really find its proper ending.
That's a great way to put it. And, what's also fascinating is how he processes another kind of loss. Through his work, the loss of continuity, of family tradition. And this is where the elves really come in, their role in his world.
Ah, okay. So if the Shire is the idea of that cozy physical home, Rivendell is something different, like maybe a sanctuary for memory.
Exactly, Rivendell. He calls it the last homely house east of the sea. It's Elrond's place, where the histories are kept, the old swords, the ancient songs. It's a place you rest before the big task ahead. A bit like maybe Tolkien's own childhood memories felt to him these brief, bright spots before war and adulthood changed everything. He even wrote in The Fellowship of the Ring something like, "Time doesn't seem to pass here. It just is. That timelessness, it's a gift to the weary characters." Much like Tolkien himself found refuge in books and language, in the rituals of his faith. Rivendell is kind of the imagined safe haven he never really had. A place where the past isn't lost, it's alive and treasured.
And this whole theme, exile, longing, it's not just in The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings. It gets even bigger, almost cosmic, in the Silmarillion, right? His mythology collection.
Oh, absolutely. In the Silmarillion, the elves, the greatest of Iluvatar's children, they're just fundamentally marked by this deep longing for Valinor, the undying lands across the sea. You look at stories like The Flight of the Noldor.
Yeah.
The elves are literally kicked out of paradise, and so much of their tragedy comes from trying to get back what they lost, even when they're banned from returning. There's a Tolkien scholar, Verlyn Flieger, who put it perfectly in her book Splintered Light. She said, for Tolkien, loss is not merely personal, it is metaphysical.
Yeah.
This huge primordial sense of loss. It lines up directly with Tolkien's own life, doesn't it? Being taken from South Africa, losing his parents, being shifted around to boarding schools, then the trenches, then seeing post-war industrial England. It's like his own life became the blueprint for this epic mythic storytelling.
So the longing for Valinor isn't just about a place, it's like longing for Eden. Or maybe even for childhood. That perfect time you can remember, but you can never truly go back to. And that sense of loss, it didn't stop with his childhood, did it? The First World War. That must have just amplified everything, taken away even more.
Profoundly so. World War I took so many of his closest friends, particularly the members of the TCBS, the Tea Club, and Barovian Society. This was his group. You know, idealistic young guys who shared his love for literature and mythology.
It's hard to even grasp that level of loss. Losing not just a home, but your band of brothers, your fellowship. And you can practically feel that experience bleeding into the pages.
You really can. The dead marshes in the Two Towers. Frodo and Sam crossing that landscape. Tolkien himself said it was inspired by the Somme, those ghostly faces under the water, the flickering lights. They're the ghosts of war, the weight of memory. So visceral. He wrote about it very starkly in Letter 66. Just said, by 1918, all but one of my close friends were dead. So yeah, his longing for home is completely tied up with this longing for friendship, for connection, for a world that felt whole before it all fell apart.
Okay, so given all this deep well of grief and loss, when you think about how Tolkien processes it in his writing, is there one character who really stands out for you as his sort of literary response? Samwise Gamgee always jumps out at me, but what do you think?
It's funny you mentioned Sam, because yes, I completely agree. If you're looking for that thread of hope, of resilience amidst the darkness, Samwise Gamgee is, I think, Tolkien's most profound answer to all that grief. He talks about the Shire constantly, doesn't he? Not just wistfully, but like, it's his fuel. It's what keeps him going through Mordor. Tolkien actually called Sam the chief hero of The Lord of the Rings, said so in Letter 131. And it's Sam's quiet strength, the strength that comes from ordinary life, from loyalty and love. That's what succeeds, where brute force or grand power fails. His vision of home, of the Shire, that's what gets him through.
Yeah, and that line, okay, it's famous from the movie, but the spirit is pure Tolkien. When Frodo is completely broken, I can't do this, Sam. And Sam says, there's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for. That really captures it, doesn't it? What Tolkien himself seemed to hold on to. Memory, beauty, the hope, however fragile, of getting home again.
Which brings up a really important point. How does Tolkien manage to balance this almost overwhelming sense of loss with genuine hope? He actually came up with a word for it, didn't he? Eucatastrophe. That sudden, joyful turn when everything looks absolutely hopeless, and then grace intervenes somehow. For Tolkien, the ultimate eucatastrophe, the model for all others, was the resurrection in his own faith.
Right. And in The Return of the King, the scouring of the Shire feels like a perfect literary example. Home has been violated, almost ruined, but then it's restored gloriously by the hobbits themselves. That's a eucatastrophe.
It is. But, and this is the really crucial nuanced part, it's not unchanged. The Shire is restored, yes, but Frodo can't stay. The wound he carries from his journey, from the ring, from that exile, it lingers. He can't quite fit back in. And this dual reality, restoration and lingering loss, that feels like Tolkien's most personal, most deeply felt theme. He wrote in Letter 89 something like, there cannot be any story without a fall. All stories are ultimately about the fall. But, and this is the key, they're also about the hope of return, even if that return is complicated, even if it's transformed.
So what we're really seeing then is that J.R.R. Tolkien's stories, they don't just run away from his life story. They transform it. They transmute it. The orphan boy who lost his father, then his mother, then his friends who wandered from place to place, from school to the trenches. He gives the world this enduring myth of return. He doesn't ignore the loss. He seems to, well, almost sanctify it, give it meaning within the story.
Exactly. Middle-earth becomes this vast tapestry woven from all those longings. Longing for home, for light, for memory that doesn't fade. The Shire, Rivendell, Valinor, they aren't just places on a map. They represent deep emotional truths about needing to belong somewhere. And through characters like Frodo and Sam, Aragorn, the elves, Tolkien basically writes the story every orphan, every exile hopes for, that no matter how far you wander, you can find your way home again or find a new home.
Ultimately, I think what this deep dive really illuminates is that in Middle-earth, just like it must have been in Tolkien's own heart, the road does go ever on. But it doesn't lead into just forgetting the past. It leads towards recovering what was good, what was beautiful, what was lost. So maybe something for you to think about after this. Consider that line from Frodo near the end of The Return of the King. He says, "There is no real going back. Though I may come to the Shire, it will not seem the same, for I shall not be the same." What does that insight, that bittersweet truth, suggest about what true homecoming really means for you?